Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Montgomery County Council votes 5-4 to increase the minimum wage to $15 per hour. How should the Democratic-led General Assembly respond to Donald Trump? On the eve of the inauguration, should President Obama denounce the groups that want to disrupt the Trump swearing in? And finally, does President Obama deserve to be on Mount Rushmore? Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by the former president of the Montgomery County branch of the NAACP, Henry Hailstock. Republican and railroad industry consultant, Phil Bell. Industrialist and former Maryland Assistant Secretary of Business, William Askinazi. And political strategist, Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. The Montgomery County Council this week voted 5-4 to approve an increase in the minimum wage to $15 an hour for most businesses by 2020. Now, most businesses small business oppose the increase, and for perspective, I want to present the comments of Norman Brodsky, owner and operator of a chain of fast casual restaurants in New York called Kobayaki. Right now, labor costs in each of our restaurants averages about 26% of revenue. If $15 an hour becomes our entry-level wage, there will be consequences. We will have to make significant changes to our operation just to stay in business, and jobs will be lost. The reason is simple. It's simple math. Our restaurants will no longer be viable if labor costs rise above 35% of revenue. And no, we can't just jack up prices and pass the additional costs along to customers. There are real limits to what people will pay. We can charge only so much for a shrimp tempura roll or a Kobe beef burger before our customers will start looking at other dining options. Susan, was it a surprise that the vote was closer than many predicted? Why did Sid Katz, Nancy Florine, Craig Rice, and Roger Berliner vote against the proposal?
I believe that they were thinking about the small businesses out there. There was concern about the time frame. And the minimum wage in Montgomery County in July is going, I believe, up to $11 and something. And so I think they wanted a slower pace. In the case of Roger, he's running for county executive, and it sent him out a bit. And they're also concerned about listening to everyone. And the way it is right now, due to the fact there is this split, I think it puts the county executive in a real bind as to what he's going to do.
Well, that's a great lead-in to Bill. Bill, is there a possibility that the county executive, Ike Leggett, may veto the bill?
I don't.
And should he?
It's not. First of all, he should, but it's not a real possibility. He hasn't been a friend to business, really. And I got to tell you that the quickest way to suffocate small business is to have the government interfere, reach down, and force a business owner to pay an artificial wage. What it's going to do, it's going to drive out businesses to Virginia. It's going to be anti-family and anti-job because the mom and pop businesses, which is 97% of America's businesses, won't do business in Montgomery County. That decreases the tax base, and in turn it deprives us of services we so desperately need. A lot of the liberals don't understand that argument. It's not the quick fix, throw money at people and let's feel good. What it is, it's long-term prosperity that's fostered by small business.
I'm glad he used that. I'm glad he used that word prosperity because you have to look at the living wage. Right now, it's one adult male here living. The living wage is, let's say, $15. Actually, right now you have $8 and some odd cent for the wage now.
It's 10 something.
And
it's
looking
10
at
right
the
now.
cost of living. It's
Henry,
going to be.
Without a doubt, there's a trade-off.
Let me finish in this. It is a big trade-off, but people have to live. You said the mom and pop businesses and everything. Who caters to the mom and pop businesses? It's not the people that are well off. It is the middle income and lower income individuals. And if they can't buy the food, child care, and rent, lease or mortgage, it's going to be a problem.
I want to go to Phil on this.
You had on television one mother interviewed talking to her kids, trying to get them to understand, what her money
All right,
went
Phil,
toward.
I'm going to come back to you on this because after I come back to Phil. Phil, according to Ed Rinsey, the former president and CEO of McDonald's USA, the push for a $15 starter wage has negatively impacted the career prospects of employees who are just getting started in the workforce while extinguishing the businesses that employed them. He argues that businesses with profit margins who will replace full-service employees with costly investments in self-service alternatives. So should the council have increased the minimum wage?
Absolutely not. First of all, let's get back to what the minimum wage is. It's not designed to support an adult male to live provide his only form of income. It's not designed to support young parents. It's not designed to support any of those. That's for young people just entering the workforce. That's for folks that have the ability to work 2 or 3 jobs, whatever is necessary. It's something that we did. It's something that our parents did. And otherwise, to gain experience and grow. And Henry, I got to be
Wait a minute,
honest
Henry,
with you.
I want to finish
what
with
you're
you.
saying.
Henry, I want to
I
finish
am
with
listening.
you.
I am
Phil,
listening
I
to
want to.
myself.
We got
Yeah.
30 seconds left. So if businesses automate, what are you going to say to those people who can't get a job because the jobs have been taken away because they've been automated out of existence?
That's a scare tactic, because let's look. You wanted to mention me working for Giant Food. Giant Food did automation on their registers, okay? Because you have self checkouts now. All right. Everybody screamed that it was going to take away the jobs and everything else, but it did not. People have to look at what they want to do, where they want to do it, and what they need to do.
And
Wait a second. Guys, we're at it.
this
We're going to a hard break. We'll talk about this more because it's a topic
we really need
that the
to.
General Assembly is going to take up also.
Somebody
All
has to
right.
work
So does
2
the
or 3
election
jobs.
does the election of a Republican as president have any effect on what goes on in Annapolis with our General Assembly, which is overwhelmingly controlled by the Democratic Party? Susan.
It is going to have an effect because it may be up to the state to make certain that we keep the Affordable Care Act, which is important. It's important in terms of the environment because there are those who, and the head of the EPA even challenged the cleanup of the Bay when he was an attorney general in another state. There is also the cost of education and road construction. So there are a lot of reasons that they may have to make up for all the cuts that the new administration says they're going to make.
Well, Bill, Susan paints a dire picture. Is it going to be like that?
No, it's going to be a marginal effect. I mean, Maryland runs its economy on the largesse of the federal budget and government. NIH, NIST, those budgets are pretty much going to stay the same. They're little slightly decimal points. It's in the billions of dollars it feeds the jobs. Sanctuary cities might be affected because if you have immigration policies with this president, you could bet on that. There may be a lot of constitutional challenges arising out of Maryland to some of President Trump's new policies.
And you know what's interesting is with the FBI, the Trump administration has already asked Virginia for some traffic plans, and with an election coming up for governor, I would not be surprised if Trump would like to intervene and give the FBI to Virginia to make a Republican governor perhaps more feasible. And I think we're going to be seeing dealing like that with this new administration.
That's like reading Ouija boards,
Yeah,
Susan.
that's
Phil,
speculation.
what do you think the impact of a Trump presidency will have on our state of Maryland?
Now, you asked me what it will. What it should have is it should be the General Assembly looking at ways to get away from being tied to the federal government largesse. What's really going to happen is you'll see more Democrats grandstanding, looking for ways to prop themselves up because that's what tends to happen. It's what this General Assembly is known for, and I don't expect anything different.
Henry.
I don't know about all that, but I know that we're going to have to really fight to help this health care because if they cut the Affordable Care Act, it's going to be a problem for Marylanders.
Millions and millions of dollars.
Not just the state. Also, with the immigration laws that are going to be possibly affected, we're going to have students here that have been counting on being able to go to school to get a higher education. It's going to affect us economically, believe it or not. Also, looking at the environment, it's going to be a problem there too. Because if they start cutting some of the funds for the environmental protection.
Well, we don't know. All of this is speculative. We don't know what's going to be.
You asked for speculation.
I understand that. All of it is speculative. Mm-hmm. Once we get into the real game, which will start in a couple of weeks, then we'll be able to figure out what really impacts we'll have on the state of Maryland. When we come back from this short break, how would you rate the presidency of Barack Obama? Is he Rushmore worthy? And who will you blame if there are violent confrontations during the inaugural festivities? Stay tuned. Back to your corners. Now, the controversy surrounding the election of Donald Trump remains unabated. As we sit here on the evening before the swearing in, approximately 70 members of the House of Representatives have announced that they will not attend in protest. There's at least 2 organizations, Disrupt J20, which plans to have protesters at each entry point of the inaugural to block entrances and bottle up traffic. And then there's the group, the Anti-Fascist Coalition, which believes that the best way to fight fascism is to prevent other people from freely assembling in private locations by throwing smoke bombs at the attendees. Bill, are we likely to see a peaceful transfer of power tomorrow?
Actually, there's already been a peaceful transfer of power. Tomorrow is more symbolic to me, or to a lot of Americans, than what have you. We're not Venezuela. We're not a third world country where tanks are going to roll up Pennsylvania Avenue. There's going to be a coup d'etat. I don't think anybody expects that. Well, however, there will be protests. There may be some riots. But as we move on and have a transitional democracy like we've had for the last 300 years plus, or whatever, we're going to be a strong country again.
But think of the statement that just came out of your mouth.
What?
There will be some riots.
There may be.
I don't
yes.
think so.
Yes.
I mean, that's an outrageous thing.
Well, look at the divide.
I don't think it'll be any.
Look at the
riots.
divide right now, and look
There
at all
is
these planned
there is going to
protests.
be some divide. Obviously, it's going to be, and it's going to be continuous divide for over a year and a half maybe. But the problem is just containing it. And I think there are going to be peaceful protests. And I think it's going to be up to the authorities to make sure they handle it correctly. If they don't handle it correctly, yes, it might be some skirmishes.
I think there's a lot of
be some skirmishes. I don't think it'll be any riots.
Well,
Why do you
I beg to
continue to
differ.
stoke this divide? Why is there a divide? Because somebody won who you didn't agree with? Hey, that happened several years ago, and guess
And his
what?
opponent
We weren't
got
out
over
rioting.
almost 3 million
Why
votes.
deny the fact that
we weren't trying to say that someone else, some
people
other
don't
country came
believe in him.
Because people don't
Just
believe
like
in him.
just like
Look,
people
this
just
is-
like people like you didn't
Henry,
believe in Obama.
This is the reason
and
I didn't believe in Obama.
disrespected
Henry, the
him
reason I
as
didn't
a
believe in
president.
Obama is because I don't believe in government as the way to operate my life.
Well,
you have continued to stoke this.
Is
You
that
and the
or is
rest of
that
the
not
folks
a
in your
divide?
party,
Is that or is
and
that not a
that's-
divide?
Well, I want to rein this in.
So don't try to-
because the question is, we haven't really heard anything from the Democratic Party about condemning the potential violence that may occur. Susan, should your party have been more forceful in coming out against these protests?
I think that
Why?
the Democratic Party has nothing to do with it. President Obama has led masterfully this transition. Again, yesterday, he said, I am more hopeful than ever. He said...
Then why didn't he condemn the 70 Congresspeople who are disrespecting the new
Because
president?
you know what? We have the right of
Freedom of speech.
of choice.
Well, but-
and you know what? People have missed before, and and the president tweeted, "Fine, I'll use your seat for someone else. Just let me know." We have that right. It's called the First Amendment, and you know what? His rating at 36% is lower than any president ever coming in. He
What
lost
does
by
that have to
well.
do
Wait
with
a minute.
anything,
Let
Susan?
me finish. And he lost
Susan,
the popular
if there
vote
is
by
violence tomorrow, who's going to be to blame for that?
The people that are participating.
yeah,
in
the
the
people
thing.
that are participating. Nobody
What
is
about the people
stoking
funding
the
it?
violence. No one is
First of all,
stoking the
organizations
violence.
like George Soros
Because
have
somebody
proven that they're willing to stoke
protests
this?
and walks, why do you think it has to be violence?
Henry,
the only violence is going to be
these groups, particularly the anti-fascist group, has proclaimed that is their end means,
intent.
that they intend to incite a riot. They intend to throw smoke bombs at the attendees, and that's their whole purpose.
But why is
Okay,
it up to
now-
the Democrats to
now-
say something? Why aren't the Republicans
that's
saying
your
something?
donors
That's the
are
first thing I was
supporting
going to
this. You
basically
continue
say.
to fund this.
Why
That's where
does
this comes from.
one party have to have control of all this? It is up
didn't say
to
they had
the
control.
authority.
It's
It's
a
up
que-
to
it's a
the
question of
authorities
speaking
to
out
keep
against
control
it.
of it, because you're going to have people coming in to a group to try to incite things, to disrupt it, and to cause them to have dishonest belief and proof and
And
going along with all this.
Trump is tweeting. He's so great that all of these motorcycle groups are coming into town. So,
but Henry, here's the issue.
Okay.
And people do stoke this. They just they
You have some people that are going to-
feed
I
the
agree.
divide.
I agree.
Earlier this
I
week,
agree.
President Trump met with his diversity coalition, and among them were football legend Jim Brown, comedian personality Steve Harvey. And then in response, CNN commenter Mark Lamont Hill called these men a bunch of mediocre Negroes being dragged in front of a TV as a photo op for Donald Trump's exploitive campaign against black people. Now, how does that inflammatory language not do anything but stoke the divide even further? This is intolerable. It would have been intolerable if somebody had done that for President Obama. It should be intolerable here.
Donald Trump went on for 5 years doing
Okay,
these.
His
first of all,
disdain?
I can understand his disdain because Trump did it only to try to deter the fact of what he did against a
Look,
legend,
Jim
a civil rights
Brown and Steve Harvey went there on their own volition.
Let me finish, okay? And so did
So are
King
they,
III.
So are
He
they?
went on their own volition.
So are they mediocre Negroes?
Did I say that I said I can understand his disdain? I didn't say I approved of his disdain.
Okay.
My concern is if the president, out of respect, asked me to come to talk to him about something, yes, I'll go to and talk to him about it. And I think the same thing with Steve Harvey, especially Jim Brown, because Jim Brown did a lot in the civil rights and equal rights movement. Okay, the problem is whether he is going to follow up on it. Personally, I don't think he will.
Well, we'll find out.
I think that it was just a show right now. That's why you
Well-
have disdain from people like that. I wouldn't necessarily call those leaders, to me, what he said, because
All
I'm
right.
not going to say that. I think they, out of respect, went to him and talked to him and tried to, get his point and get their point across.
All right. Well, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that there will not be any violence tomorrow, and I'm hopeful that we do heal the divide
You and me both.
in the months and years ahead. But right now, I want to talk about the outgoing president. And on Friday at 12 p.m., there will be a transfer of power from Barack Obama to Donald Trump. And this peaceful transfer of power is a significant and a magnificent thing to recognize. But it's going to be impossible not to talk about Trump. He's a lightning rod. But right now, I want to talk about President Obama, because the election of President Obama was a historic moment in our country's history. As the first African American elected to that office, it was quite an accomplishment. Now, every commentator, myself included, we want to test. We have our little tests, and mine is the Rushmore test. Does the president belong among the greats? Does he belong on Mount Rushmore? Historian Arthur Schlesinger is credited with devising the first empirical standard, which had 5 levels of assessment of a president: great, near great, average, below average, and failure. And then he applied it to about 20 different criteria. But let's start with Susan. What's your overall assessment of President Obama and his term in office?
Above near great, but not great.
Henry.
I had the same for various reasons. I had the same.
Phil.
Failure. But I also want to start by saying something very important. I want to disagree with you on one thing. You said that his election was historic because of his race. I don't believe that. I grew up hearing the words of Dr. Martin Luther King and otherwise, which said, I'm equal to everyone else out there. So why would it be historic if someone else who's equal to me is elected? I don't believe that, and it's a trope that we need to go away.
It's historic because
wait a minute. Phil asked me the question, so let me answer it. I mean, I think it was historic because people at one time did not believe an African American could be elected to the presidency, but because there was systemic racism in our country. That's why I believe it was a historic event. I think the fact that it proved that Americans are not haters and who are open to all persons of every race, creed, and color. There was a time when Catholics couldn't get elected. There's a time when Jews couldn't get appointed to offices. So I think as a nation, it was historic. That's why I say that. And
that's why others say that.
And I agree with you that the character and quality of the man should be measured. And that's why we're asking whether or not his presidency should be rated and how highly it should be rated. It's a separate question. Now I'm going to go to Bill.
Yeah, to equate a president with greatness is an extremely high standard. It combines two things in my view. One, a ability to connect to a common person, to the common American, to inspire, to translate vision. But the second one is actions, performance. What did you achieve? So I would rate this president, unfortunately, as average or a little bit below average because he didn't fulfill the promise and the hope that he had campaigned on.
Yes.
Now, Henry, you left it hanging when you rated President Obama, and now I'm going to have the follow-up question. What was his strongest attributes?
The strongest attribute was taking an economy, taking a nation who was torn with war and rebuild it. Because we were in a depressed state. And he took the economy, turned it around in a couple of years. He worked with the government and worked it out where more diversity, more concern about the average worker, and he worked on a good living.
Okay.
For a good living.
Phil, was there anything you liked about President Obama?
Well, is there anything I liked? I do like that he had a little bit of an air of fun and enjoyment, and you know, for all that I disagreed with him on as far as his policies, he was somebody interesting, certainly somebody who you could relate to in some respects. So that's good.
Bill.
His oratorical skills, I think, were phenomenal. I think he had the ability to transform a generation in terms of his message, in terms of his inclusion. And unfortunately, I think for the reasons I'll explain, I think he fell short on that.
Susan, quickly. 'Cause we gotta
Intelligence, integrity, and communication skills that starting tomorrow will go down the tubes, and we'll miss that.
All right, so we're running out of time. So here's the concluding question. 20 years from now, how will historians look at President Obama?
They will look at him as an intelligent man who did what he could to have everyone have health care, have a place in this United States equally, and really have inclusion.
Phil.
They will agree with you on the belief about him being historic, but at the same time they'll view him as a transitional figure from one era to the next because not very much was accomplished during this time.
Bill.
Groundbreaker, but failure in foreign policy that really upset, didn't identify with the new global economies, and didn't really understand the intricacies of foreign policy, especially in the Middle East.
Susan.
What he did in the United States to bring more equality to gays, to everyone else. Just an intelligent, thoughtful person who is going to go down as a great president someday.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, panel. Very interesting discussion. Stay tuned for Party Shots when we come back from this very short break. And welcome back. Now with Parting Shots, Susan Heltemes.
This week, a great announcement was made that really shakes up the political structure in Montgomery County, and that is Delegate Sheila Hickson has resigned her position as the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. Delegate Ann Kaiser, also from Montgomery County, has stepped into her shoes. But that is an example of the kinds of changes that are going to happen next time on the election. For the county council, the county executive, people are moving around, and it is going to be a whole new day on the horizon in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Susan. Bill Askinazi, your parting shot.
Well, I got it on his way out the door, President Obama, he dropped one big time on excusing or pardoning Private Chelsea Manning. This was a traitor who had 750,000 military documents. It led to the deaths, arguably, of what certainly endangered the United States. And to pardon this person over the objections of Defense Secretary, his own Defense Secretary, is abominable, and it really disgraces what a lot of military figures is an abuse of privilege.
Thank you, Bill. And Phil Bell.
This week, as we've been spending a lot of time focused on the presidential election and the transition, it's noteworthy that Tim Raines was finally elected to the Hall of Fame. Tim was somebody who did an outstanding job, but he was always somebody a little bit on the cusp, but it's nice to see that he'll be joining everybody in Cooperstown.
And Henry Hailstock, your parting shot.
Yes, I'd like to commend Jeffrey Slavin for standing up for being honest and a rightful person on a disgraceful act that Woodmont Country Club did in disgracing the president. Not saying the president didn't even apply for membership or consider membership as we know it, but they still come out and say they would not have him as a member, which is very disgraceful. Kudos to Jeff Slavin, and I hope other members of the Woodmont Country Club turns in their resignation as well.
Well, I want to thank the panel tonight. We've had a very spirited conversation this evening about two very controversial men, and we're going to, the audience is going to make up their own opinion as to how they see them. But I think we're blessed that tomorrow we will see a peaceful transfer of power, whether you're happy or sad that Donald Trump has been elected. America will continue as a great and shining democracy. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show. For 21 This Week, I'm Casey Aiken.